That was the second time I've driven all the way from Texas to Mexico near Cancun and all the way back to Texas again. I like going down there. I've spent about 6 months total of my life traveling around Mexico. When I was working for 3M, I spent 6 months working in southern Italy, 6 months working in South Africa, and I've traveled for projects for 10 days in Israel and have been driven across Botswana, Zimbabwe. I even, back when bungee jumping was cool, I bungee jumped from the highest bungee bridge in the world at Victoria Falls. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world. And that's why I'm not shorter than I am today. If they had let me go a little further, I would have hit bottom. But in any case, I've traveled a lot of the world. I've seen a lot of the way things work. I've been to a lot of poor countries. I've seen rich people and poor people. I am convinced that freedom works. I do love America the most, but I think that we are losing our freedoms here. We're losing our country, we're destroying it, and I think we should not blame immigrants, we should not blame terrorists, and sometimes I'm thinking it's too late now to continue blaming Republican and Democratic congressmen. At some point, we've got to step up and start asking the voters what's going wrong and get them to get involved. I think Americans have forgotten about what freedom really means. And that's why I'm a libertarian, and that's why I'm a member of the Libertarian Party. I want to help lead America back towards more freedom and less government. After going to Mexico and selling my business and running for Austin City Council, I still had some time on my hands and still had a little money left. And the Libertarian Party of Texas was faced with a huge petition drive. Usually they automatically qualify for the ballot to run candidates year after year, but a few things all came together and they didn't do well in the key races in 2002. As a result, in 2004, we had to do a petition drive that got 45,540 valid signatures. Now, it didn't look like it was getting done. I had been a local libertarian activist, worked for the local party, ran for a local office, and here my state party wasn't doing its job to keep us on the ballot. It didn't look like anybody was going to step up and take care of it, and since no one else stepped up, I finally said, hey, I will spend the next 6 months volunteering full-time to try and help get the party on the ballot. I wasn't the leader of the ballot drive, but I offered to volunteer and organize volunteers throughout the state of Texas. I spent 6 months traveling around Texas, training petitioners and collecting signatures, and our party was broke. I spent my own money that entire 6 months. I paid for my own hotel bills, my own truck expenses, didn't get any of it reimbursed. And eventually, after all that hard work, as well as a lot of hard work from libertarians throughout Texas and some money from the National Libertarian Party, Texas did collect enough signatures to get back on the ballot. That was a great thing. Shortly after that, the Texas Libertarians had a convention and a new chair was elected, and I was hired to become the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Texas. It was a new paid position. Before that, everything was volunteer. And at that point, I had to learn how to recruit candidates, raise funds, and also do things to get in the media and in the news to publicize the party. And along those lines, in 2007, when Lance Armstrong, he's the famous Tour de France bicycle champion. I think he won 6 times or 7 times, I forget. He was pushing for a $3 billion taxpayer-funded new cancer research center in Texas. It was something, obviously, that I was against, libertarians were against. And so I sent out a press release and attended a press conference, and I just want to give you a few of the sentences that were from that. Government growth is the biggest threat to health care of Texans. Unfortunately, the habit of throwing more taxpayer money at every symptom a problem once confined to Democrats has spread to Republicans who supported the $3 billion cancer fund, including 29 Republican state representatives, 14 Republican state senators, and our Republican governor, Rick Perry, who signed the measure into law. Now, this was passed by the legislature, but it still had to be put up before voters as a proposition to be voted on and passed. And so this is what we were fighting against, trying to get the voters not to vote for it. So, and here's the part that was quoted in most papers and on television. What I find most depressing about this proposition is Lance Armstrong's involvement. Once able to inspire millions of voluntary donations, Lance has become Texas' #1 government growth advocate. I call upon all Texans who value freedom to take off Lance's wristbands, once a symbol of courage, but now a symbol of the chains of taxation, and throw them in the trash. That was a bit offensive. It was also a bit entertaining. And I tell you what, because the press knew who I was a libertarian, a well-known libertarian who had run for office. They showed up to cover that. I was on every major television station in Austin, as well as one in Oklahoma, and in all the papers as well. Believe it or not, Austin is known as the San Francisco of California. It's the big government liberal city in Texas. I'm sorry, the San Francisco of Texas. That measure, I think partly due to our efforts, the Libertarians' efforts, but also some others in the Austin area, that measure, it still passed in Austin, but it was in the 50% range, whereas in the rest of Texas, in the rest of conservative Texas, that new $3 billion research center overwhelmingly passed at the polls. I think Libertarians made a big difference convincing folks to vote against this proposition. I want Libertarians to attack President Obama and the Democrats over the Patriot Act and the wars. But if you want to do that in a big way, we need more help, and we need a bigger party. We need more candidates to run for office. We need more active state parties and more county affiliates who are able to get out the word. When I was executive director in Texas, I focused on recruiting as many candidates as possible. I went from being a manufacturing productivity expert to cranking out candidates using all of the productivity and business process reengineering techniques that I learned while I was working in the business world. Texas Libertarians led the nation in votes. In fact, in 2006, since we had so many candidates, 57% of all votes for Libertarians in the United States were for candidates in Texas. Texas had 168, or 30% of the total number of candidates nationwide. In 2008, we recruited even more, a record 173 Libertarian Party candidates for office, which was still 29% of the nationwide Libertarian Party total. While Texas has 8% of the U.S. population, Libertarian candidates in Texas in 2008 received 28% of the U.S. House and 44% of the state representative votes received by Libertarians nationwide. For 2007 and 2008, we raised more money in Texas than the Libertarian parties of Florida, New York, and California combined. Texas is 8% of the population. Those states comprise 24%. After the 2008 elections, I announced I was leaving the Libertarian Party to return to the business world. I enjoyed working for the Libertarian Party of Texas, but I'll tell you right now, working for the Libertarian Party of Texas was the worst personal financial mistake I ever made. It was a paid job, but it was a quite low paid job. So I was leaving to go back to the business world. I let folks know that, and I announced it widely. I even put that in a fundraising letter to help fund the next guy who came in after me. That letter did quite well. And additionally, I got an email. This was like 3 days before Christmas. I was about to head back to Baton Rouge. Nobody else was really doing much, and this was my last month. I was about done. Got an email from a guy who wanted to meet to find out about the Libertarian Party. I've gotten thousands of emails like that, and so I'm like, okay, well, I'd like to go home for Christmas, but I looked up his name, Googled it, found it. He was somewhat prominent, and so I did go meet with him. Wasn't expecting much because I've met with lots of folks like that. He ended up signing up for the largest monthly pledge that we had in Texas at that time, and that was just for the next folks who were carrying on. I told him that, do this, I want the party to continue. He started talking about these big dollar signs, what if we did this, what if we did that? I said, that'd be great, that'd be great. I was kind of crying a little bit inside too, because I'm leaving, the next guys are coming. He ended up giving, so far, $250,000 to the Libertarian Party of Texas. He's also now currently the biggest donor to the National Libertarian Party. The most you can give to the National Libertarian Party in a year is $30,800 for yourself. Your spouse can also give $30,800, and that's what they're doing. Right. I used to be a Republican. I joined the Libertarian Party in 1996. I actually voted for Bob Dole in 1996, even though I just joined the party. I mean, what good did that do? I felt disgusted after that. I've felt disgusted about it ever since then, except for the fact that I'm glad I feel disgusted about that. Bob Dole was a typical Republican. He could actually say, we need smaller government and we need to subsidize our corn farmers and ethanol. I mean, he could say that in the same sentence, and he did. I remember it well. He said that several times. I've been a hardcore libertarian ever since that experience. While I often disagree with Democrats, I'm still madder than hell at the Republican Party. I feel like they fooled me, they lied to me, and I listened to them, and I tuned out the Democrats, I tuned out everything else because that was the team I was on. I certainly don't like Democrats and most of what they do, but I'm now a lot more in tune with all of the big government things that Republicans have done and that they continue to do. It took me a long time before I could admit, and I bet most of you can't admit this in here, but it was a long time before I could admit that President Bill Clinton was better for freedom than either George Bush. I love Ron Paul, but the rest of the Republican congressmen have been liars and hypocrites. I created that Republican wall of shame out there. That's something that libertarians do. We have to point out when Republicans are doing the wrong thing. Republicans like Paul Ryan's on that wall. Paul Ryan is this new budget guru for the Republicans. He's thought to be some fiscal conservative. Paul Ryan, and lots of people tell me they're surprised to hear this, Paul Ryan voted for the No Child Left Behind Act. He voted for the 2003 $400 billion new Medicare prescription plan. He voted for the TARP bailouts. He voted for corn and ethanol subsidies, and he voted for the GM and Chrysler bailouts. That's the new up-and-coming young Republican budget hawk. The Libertarian Party is critical to influencing public debates. We point out when Democrats are hypocritical on personal freedoms, and we point out when Republicans are hypocritical on taxes and spending. I believe the Libertarian Party makes a big difference and delivers a huge bang for the buck. I'm not naive. I have an engineering degree, an MBA from the University of Michigan, and by the way, the University of Michigan was ranked the number two business program in the nation while I was there. I had a real business. I was CEO of a company that put in countertops with 20 employees for 3 years. We fixed it up and sold it at a profit. We were the only ones selling showers with a 5-year warranty at the height of remember the mold scare, the black mold, everything's toxic and moisture and homeowners insurance are going through the roof. We made real products that worked, installed them, and gave them the longest warranty in Austin, Texas. The Libertarian Party has 160 elected officials throughout the nation. Most of those are in small offices like small city councils or school boards and some other county positions. We do have the highest elected libertarian in the nation here today, Ed Coleman. He's in the back. We're probably going to give him a couple minutes, but just raise your hand, Ed Coleman. Ed Coleman is a city councilor in the city of Indianapolis, which is has a population of about 1 million people. He's running for re-election in November, and we'd certainly like your help. While we do have some people in elected office, when we run for things like Congress and governor, what we do is point out important issues and help hold the Republicans and Democrats' feet to the fire. Last election, we had 5 U.S. Senate candidates in live televised debates. A few years ago, one libertarian who spent $0 on his campaign got over 1 million votes in Texas. $0, 1 million votes. How many Republicans have a spend-to-vote ratio of that, or Democrats? My favorite part of FreedomFest so far this year was Judge Andrew Napolitano's speech and the questions that followed up. One of the questions was, what is it people can do? What can we do? Because the Republicans and Democrats in Congress keep violating the Constitution. They keep growing the government. What is it we can do? His answer was, you can show up to public forums and point out what congressmen are doing wrong. Point out when they're supporting stuff that's against the Constitution because they forgot it. That is exactly what the Libertarian Party is perfectly positioned to do. And let me just give you an example. Take some average guy in Kansas. He can go to a Tea Party protest and wave a sign. He can be one of the 500 folks out there waving a sign, or be one of 100 that goes to a city council meeting and contests what's going on. Or he can file to run as a Libertarian Party candidate for office, and he can be on statewide television or local television and point out what those congressmen are doing right there live in front of millions of people. I'm a big fan of Cato, the Institute for Justice, and Reason Magazine. Those organizations have $30 million, $10 million, and $6 million budgets. The Libertarian Party has a $1.3 million budget. That's less than one McDonald's.